What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Charles Oliveira gets advice on how to beat Islam Makhachev. In just a few short weeks, Charles Oliveira will step into the octagon with Islam Makhachev in Abu Dhabi in hopes of reclaiming the UFC lightweight title. After returning to the win column with an impressive win over Beneil Dariush, Oliveira is eager to prove that the last fight between he and Makhachev was a fluke. Despite that, the former champ finds himself as a considerable underdog heading into this bout, with many of the mindset that Makhachev will once again prevail. With the rematch right around the corner, Hall of Famer Michael Bisping has offered some advice to Oliveira during a recent video for his YouTube channel.
He's got to use a lot of jabs and he's got to use a lot of straight shots. And early, much to the demise and much to the dismay, should I say, of Charles Oliveira, he's got to circle. He's got to be light on his feet. He's got to be strategic. Simple as that. He has to employ some form of strategy. And that strategy for me is avoid the clinch, okay? Early, don't take too many chances, and don't throw wild, like flying knees when you're not even in range.
Whether or not Oliveira is able to execute a winning game plan, only time will tell.
It's gonna be a good fight. I'm not saying I'm gonna beat him easy or something like it's gonna be easy fight. It's gonna be a hard fight, tough fight because he's a big guy, you know, but I believe I can finish this guy.
Shout out to our first comments on yesterday's video. Thanks for the support. Next up, let's take a look at Tony Ferguson gets emotional talking about Khabib. For years, Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov seemed to be on a collision course with one another. However, when it came down to it, despite being booked on 5 separate occasions, a fight never took place. According to Tony Ferguson, who spoke on the MMA Hour, when the Eagle left the sport, part of him went with him.
And I know when Khabib left, a little part of me left with that. Kind of sucked a little bit because we've always had that, I don't want to say negative energy, but that hype that was built around that. And then when that disappeared and the pandemic hit and team left and then just the whole, there was nothing else left for me kind of, except what I told myself is I wanted to compete. I wanted to compete enough so that way maybe possibly win or lose, Khabib would come back.
With Nurmagomedov now firmly retired from both fighting and cornering, it seems as though a fight between the two men will go down in history as the one that got away. Next up, let's take a look at Daniel Cormier goes off on NBA player. NBA veteran James Johnson recently made headlines when he claimed that with a year of training, he could take on Jon Jones. While Johnson grew up learning martial arts, much of his alleged 20-0 kickboxing record and 7-0 MMA record remains unverified. Regardless, he feels as though with training, he could compete against Jones. UFC Hall of Famer Daniel Cormier recently shot down Johnson's claim in a video for his YouTube channel.
Can you just decide that you could beat a heavyweight champion of the world? I mean, Jamel, is he out of his mind? It was hard for me to take him down. If me and Jon Jones had on wrestling shoes and we just bent over at the waist, I would beat him. But in a mixed martial arts fight wrestling, it was hard for me to take him down. Imagine what would happen with that dude.
While Jones recently entertained the idea of an MMA fight with Tyson Fury, so far he's been solely focused on defeating Stipe Miocic at UFC 295 and hasn't extended the same offer to Johnson. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at UFC Updates. This week has seen a slew of new and exciting bouts making headlines, as well as a big update regarding an up-and-coming pay-per-view event in the new year. With UFC 294, 295, and UFC 296 all lined up for the remainder of the year, Cub Swanson has now confirmed rumors that UFC 297 will take place in Toronto, revealing via Twitter that he was offered a fight on the card. While there have been no confirmed reports regarding a headliner, with featherweight kingpin Alexander Volkanovski eager to make his return in early 2024, rumors have indicated that he could defend the 145-pound title on the card. Heading into UFC Fight Night Dawson vs. Green this weekend, reports have emerged that Montel Jackson has been forced to withdraw from his scheduled fight with Chris Gutierrez. As a result, the UFC has tapped Alanton Hiley to step in for a short-notice fight against El Guapo, set to take place on October 14th. The fight will see Gutierrez look to bounce back from an April loss to Pedro Munoz, while on the flip side, Alanton Hiley will be looking to build on the 2-fight win streak. The following month, Cael Fernandez will compete against Mark Diakiese at UFC Fight Night Sao Paulo, which is set to take place on November 4th. The fight will see Fernandez look to make a successful debut after 2 straight stoppage wins under the LFA banner. On the flip side, Diakiese will be looking to snap a 2-fight skid that saw him submitted by Joel Alvarez in late July. The weekend after UFC Fight Night Sao Paulo, the UFC will hit New York for a massive UFC 295 pay-per-view card, an event which will also now include a bout between Kyung Ho Kang and John Castaneda, which was previously scheduled for the following weekend on November 18th at the UFC Apex. In its place, a bout between Jesse Butler and Jeka Saragi has now been scheduled for the November 18th card at the Apex. The bout will see Butler look to bounce back from a first-round loss to Jim Miller this summer, while Saragi looks to bounce back from a loss in his UFC debut after a 2-fight win streak on Road to UFC last year. This week also saw UFC champion Alexa Grasso undergo surgery after fracturing her hand in her Noche UFC headliner with Valentina Shevchenko. After previous reports surfaced indicating that Shevchenko had fractured her hand in the fight, Grasso took to Instagram revealing that her surgery was a success while also joking, "What are the odds, huh?" As she also wrote, "It sounds like a trilogy fight is next up whenever the two women are healthy enough to compete."
Just a couple outside of tonight. We saw today Alexa Grasso went through surgery as well for her hand. Just curious if you could tell us about her condition and if that changes anything in terms of the plans and the schedule to do the rematch with her.
They both have hand injuries, so it's let's see what happens. I mean, traditionally those types of surgeries, 6 to 8 weeks, they start figuring out where they're at, and we got time.
Next, let's take a look at Jorge Masvidal talks Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. At UFC 296, Leon Edwards will look to make his second successful title defense when he takes on Colby Covington in a highly anticipated affair. Leading up to the bout, the MMA community seems to be split regarding how things might play out, with many confident that Edwards' striking and defensive grappling will lead to another title defense, while others believe that the pace and grappling of Covington will be too much for the champ to handle. With the fight on the horizon, Jorge Masvidal has given his thoughts on how the bout will play out during an interview with MMA Crazy. As he explained, he hopes Covington loses the bout. However, he believes that the challenger will give the champ a tough fight.
Colby is a couple notches above Usman in the grappling department if he's on top of somebody, of just being real sticky and holding somebody, not letting go. So Leon, I think with some improvements in the wrestling department, then he could get it back to his real estate, which is fighting on the feet. I think he could pull it off, man. I'm hoping he pulls it off, but it's going to be one of his tougher fights, so because Kobe's not going to come to fight.
According to longtime UFC veteran Matt Brown, after going 0-2 in undisputed title fights, it's hard to imagine Covington continuing to fight should he sustain a third loss. During the latest episode of The Fighter vs. the Writer, he explained why retirement could be on the table.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that he's going to continue fighting if he loses this fight, to be honest. I mean, he just doesn't come across to me like that kind of guy. Like you said, he hasn't fought for 2 years. Like, I don't think he's not built like me where I love fighting. And if I lost like 10 in a row, I'd still want to fight. Maybe I would or wouldn't. But, he's the kind of guy where I think, he's in there to get paid, get his money, stir up as much as he can and get out.
Whether or not Covington can capture undisputed gold, only time will tell. Next, let's take a look at Chael Sonnen reacts to Joe Rogan's comments. Joe Rogan recently spoke about the lightweight title fight that took place between Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski in Perth earlier this year. At the end of the fight, Rogan felt as though Volkanovski had won, and as a result, deserves the title of pound-for-pound king. During a recent video for his YouTube channel, Chael Sonnen reacted, explaining that while he still has Volkanovski as the pound-for-pound kingpin, he doesn't believe that there's any reason to go down the what-if road in regards to that decision.
But when you're having an active ranking and you have a head-to-head match, you have to respect it. Now, I still have Volk as number one because it's pound for pound. That match was close enough, even with him coming in second. That was competitive enough. He won more rounds in that fight than every UFC competitor versus Islam combined. So, Volk being the smaller guy, I give it to Volk. I give pound for pound to Volk.
Of course, should Makhachev defeat Charles Oliveira and Volkanovski defeat Ilia Topuria, the two could once again find themselves matched up with one another in the new year. Manel Cejudo refused Israel Adesanya apology after altercation. After Manel Cejudo and Israel Adesanya engaged in a heated back and forth during the UFC 293 Fight Week press conference, the last stylebender reportedly tried to smooth things over with the flyweight contender backstage. According to Kape, who recently spoke to MMA Fighting, he wasn't interested in exchanging pleasantries behind the scenes. After all this talk, he came to me backstage. "Hey, no disrespect, we are Africa, we're brothers." I said, "We are not brothers. Look, my problem is with Kai Kara, not with you. Why did you stand up? He can handle his business." While Kai Kara France was forced to drop out of their scheduled UFC 293 showdown, it's clear that both men still have their sights set on one another. The card, of course, also notably played host to a massive upset from Sean Strickland against Israel Adesanya. According to Adesanya's former foe, Yoel Romero, Adesanya incurred too much damage against Alex Pereira the first time the two fought back in November, and he needs to take more time off to recover after being finished by Pereira and dropped by Strickland. He spoke on the Overdogs podcast to share his thoughts on the matter.
What I think is right now, when you have a fight and you take it like the damage where you like the Oliveira Alex, they make it easy. Now easy have a little problem, not too much. That's what I think. Now he's scared a little bit.
Why?
Because
he's too relaxed,
because
too much
now
money?
because he needs to more recover. Yeah, he need more time for recover. The same that when you have a lot of punches and the one fight, you lose a lot of
For
no,
Izzy.
it's not losing.
No,
For me,
excuses for Izzy. So like
for
Sean,
me, no. Listen. Maybe he have more time for recover. That the fight is more different.
Whether or not Adesanya decides to take an extended holiday or he presses for an immediate rematch in the new year, only time will tell. Sean O'Malley vs. Chito Vera 2 was rumored on Twitter to be targeted for UFC 297 in Toronto. Sean O'Malley's coach, Tim Welsh, replied to the tweet announcing the rumor with Kape, basically saying that the rumor isn't true. It's possible the UFC is setting up this match, but for now, it remains unconfirmed. Islam Makhachev calls out the winner of Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington and says he wants a welterweight title fight next. Here's what Islam had to say.
Colby Covington obviously is fighting Leon, and he said that if he wins, he wants to fight you first. What did you think of that?
I hope he won, because I don't know what Leon say about this. I never heard Leon want to fight, but Colby won the fight. That's why I want Colby win, and we meet one day. I really believe I can beat this guy.
Top comments. Y'all know Islam was humbled by the great Volk. Someone responded with, "I'm not talking crap, just providing my opinion. I think Islam won, and Alex was very peppy. His reach isn't usually an issue, but it was with Islam, costing him accuracy and significant strikes compared. His energy was much higher than Islam, but his ground wasn't as good as Islam's. It did expose Islam, though, at such a high level. Unfortunately, Paddy Pimblett is the closest Tony's ever going to get to fighting a chicken nugget. I love ONE FC, but they need to put more into their marketing. I have no idea some of their events are taking place half the time." Make sure to leave a comment and you might get featured in our next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss any MMA news. Check out our video from yesterday if you missed it. See you tomorrow.